couple of years ago, my friend Jay and I were out hiking near his grandparents' cabin in rural Pennsylvania. There's a trail that runs behind the property that eventually leads to an old logging road. Locals always said there was a house back there, abandoned for decades, but most people avoided it. We set out just before noon, carrying nothing but flashlights and something to drink. The hike was about 2 miles. The house was old, windows were smashed, and had this dark feeling I can't describe. We stepped inside, and the air was thick with mold. Empty liquor bottles all across the living room, most of them broken. On the walls were disturbing images, twisted faces, bodies. Words scratched so hard into the paint that the drywall underneath was exposed. In one corner on the floor was a Bible, torn apart, its pages shredded and burned around the edges. Jay picked it up, and we exchanged a look. We both knew this wasn't just some kids fooling around. That's when we heard it. We froze. The sound was heavy. Jay whispered, "Someone's here." We weren't sure if it was the owner, some squatter, or worse. We quietly backed toward the staircase, trying not to make a sound. Then the footsteps started coming down the stairs. There was no time to escape. The only hiding spot nearby was a small closet under the staircase. The closet was pitch black, dust and cobwebs filled the air. I could hear Jay's breathing quicken right beside me. The footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs and stopped. For a long moment it was silent. Then we heard slow movement across the floor, directly toward the closet door. My heart was pounding so loud, I was sure it gave us away. The footsteps stopped. Then came 3 slow taps on the door, and the man's voice. "I see you." Jay gripped the handle, saying that we should run. I shook my head, terrified to make a sound. Then, suddenly, the closet door moved. Someone yanked it open. Without thinking, Jay shoved the door with all his strength. It slammed into whoever was outside, knocking them backwards. I caught a glimpse, a man, maybe late 40s, filthy clothes, tangled hair, falling hard onto the ground. We ran out the front door, across the porch, down the overgrown path. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop until we reached the trail. When we finally got to Jay's grandparents' cabin, we were shaking too hard to explain what happened. His grandpa just nodded, almost like he wasn't surprised. I used to be homeless for about 3 years. I lived on and off the streets of Chicago. It wasn't glamorous, but I did what I had to do to survive. I had a few regular spots where I'd sleep, usually quiet parks that the police didn't check too often. One of those spots was a small park tucked behind the church. Nobody really went there at night. The swings were rusted, the benches were broken, and the lights had all burned out years ago. But it was quiet, and it was mine. On a chilly October night, I was lying on one of the benches with my blanket wrapped around me. The city noises had died down, and it was just me, the crickets, and the occasional passing car in the distance. I was drifting in and out of sleep when I heard footsteps approaching. At first, I figured it was just something going through the park, but the steps stopped near me. I opened my eyes and saw a man standing a few feet away. He was tall, maybe 6'4", dressed in a dark coat that looked way too clean and expensive for this part of town. His face was pale, his eyes sharp, and he was smiling like he was amused by me. He said, "Rough night?" I didn't answer. When you live on the streets, you learn real quick not to engage with strangers at night. Instead, he pulled a wallet from his coat and held up a $50 bill. "I'll give you this," he said. "If you come with me, I'm looking for people willing to participate in, let's call them experiments. You'd be helping science. You'd be helping me." I sat up slowly, keeping my blanket around me. His smile never left his face. I told him I'm not interested. He tilted his head almost like he couldn't believe I said no. Then he crouched down so his face was level with mine. "Think about it. A warm bed, hot meals, more money than you've ever had. All you have to do is trust me." The way he said trust me made my skin crawl. I stood up and started walking toward the church's side street. I wanted distance between me and this guy, but his footsteps followed. "Don't walk away from me," he said, his voice sharper now. "You don't know what you're giving up." I kept walking faster. Then I heard him laugh. You'll regret this. I always regret it. That stopped me in my tracks. I turned around and for the first time his smile was gone. He looked furious. His jaw was clenched and he was gripping that $50 bill so tight it was crumpling in his hand. I shouted at him to back off. My voice echoed in the empty park. For a moment, he just stared. Then, without another word, he tucked the bill back into his coat and slowly walked toward the trees. I didn't move until I couldn't hear him anymore. Then I grabbed my stuff and walked straight to a 24-hour shelter across town. A week later, I overheard two other homeless men talking about a creepy recruiter guy offering money for experiments. One of them said a friend of his took the deal. He never saw him again. I've been an avid hiker for years. Living in Oregon, I spent most weekends out in the woods. There's something about the isolation that I love. No traffic, no noise, no people. Last spring, I decided to go on a 2-night solo camping trip in a part of the Cascades I'd never explored before. It was supposed to be a simple hike in, set up camp, and spend the weekend relaxing. The first day went exactly as planned. I hiked about 6 miles in and found a nice clearing near a creek. By sunset, I had my tent pitched, a small fire going, and dinner cooking. It was quiet, peaceful. I remember leaning back, staring up at the stars, and feeling that deep, satisfying exhaustion you get after a long day on a trail. By around 11 p.m., I was ready to call it a night. I put out the fire, zipped up my tent, and lay down in my sleeping bag. The only sounds were the wind through the trees and the creek a few yards away. Then, around maybe 1 a.m., I woke up to something strange. It was so soft at first, I thought I was dreaming, but then I heard it again. A child's voice out here. My heart rate spiked instantly. There shouldn't be anyone out here, let alone a kid. I unzipped my sleeping bag and sat there, straining to listen. It came again, same tone, same rhythm, like it was playing on a loop. That's when I realized it didn't sound natural. It didn't have that shaky, panicked tone that you'd expect from a real kid in trouble. It was flat, repetitive, almost like a recording. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the tent. The air outside was cold. The moonlight barely lit the clearing, and trees cast long, black shadows. I swept my flashlight in the direction of the voice. It was coming from deeper in the woods. Against my better judgment, I started walking toward it. Each time it played, it was the exact same pitch, same pacing, like someone just kept pressing repeat. After maybe 30 yards, I froze. My light caught something between two trees. His clothes were dark, and I could barely make out his face, but I saw the faint glint of something in his hand, maybe a phone or a small speaker. The child's voice played again, and this time I was certain it was coming from him. We just stared at each other. I don't know for how long, maybe a few seconds, maybe more. Then I slowly started stepping backwards. He didn't move, didn't say anything. I turned and walked as quickly as I could toward my tent. I didn't hear him follow at first, but as soon as I reached my tent, I heard it. He wasn't running, just a steady, deliberate pace, like he knew I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't even bother packing my tent. I grabbed my backpack, shoved my flashlight between my teeth, and started down a trail. That's when I heard him. He was talking to himself, words I couldn't make out, mixed with soft, almost skinny laughter. I walked faster. After maybe 50 minutes, I saw the faint outline of a trailhead sign in my flashlight beam. My car was just beyond it. I didn't look back until I was inside. Doors locked. When I did, my headlights caught something in the trees. It was him, standing just beyond the tree line, still watching. He didn't chase me as I drove away, but that voice was stuck in my head the whole ride home. Even now, I can't explain why he was out there, or what would have happened if I gotten closer. But I do know this. If you're hiking alone and hear someone calling for help in the middle of the night, don't go. I've been a police officer for 12 years. Most nights are routine traffic stops, noise complaints, the occasional domestic call. There's one night from about 4 years ago that still sits in the back of my head. We got a call from dispatch about a possible break-in at an old house on the edge of town. It was just after midnight. Neighbors reported lights flickering inside and strange noises coming from the basement. I pulled up the address, a rundown 2-story home with boarded windows and an overgrown yard. The place looked abandoned, but I could see a faint glow coming from one of the basement windows. I radioed in and made my way inside. The front door creaked open without much effort. It had been kicked in before. The first floor was empty. Dust, broken furniture, graffiti on the walls. The light was definitely coming from the basement. I called out, "Police, if anyone's down there, make yourself known." Silence. I drew my flashlight and gun, then started down the basement steps. The basement was cold and dark, but at the far end was a steel door, heavy, out of place in a house like this, and from behind that door, I heard it. It wasn't just one person breathing, it was multiple. I called out again, louder this time. "This is the police. Who's in there?" The breathing stopped. The silence was worse than the sound itself. I approached the door. It had heavy padlocks, but I noticed scratches all along the frame. Deep ones, as if someone or something had clawed from the inside, trying to get out. Then, without warning, something slammed against it. I stumbled back, heart pounding, gun raised. Another bang followed, harder this time, rattling the frame. And then, a voice. "Let us out." It wasn't shouted, it was whispered. Multiple voices layered together. I wanted to open that door. Every instinct told me someone was trapped down there. But the sheer wrongness of these voices stopped me. I radioed for backup. While I waited, I kept my gun trained on that door. The voices didn't stop. They whispered things, my name, even though I hadn't given it. My home address, details no stranger should know. By the time backup arrived, the noises had stopped. The banging, the breathing, every